I'm glad to see you on the Warrior of Honor channel. The confrontation between Ukraine and Russia continues. Subscribe right now to the channel to be aware of the latest news around Ukraine. Today we will talk about what happened in the last couple of days, and a lot of interesting things have happened. Traditionally, we will start by looking at the combat map. Of course, we will start from the eastern direction, namely from Soledar. According to reports from the Ukrainian side, heavy fighting is still taking place in the suburbs of Soledar. Ukrainian special forces are working in this area, delivering pinpoint strikes against advancing enemy clusters. However, it will not be possible to maintain complete control over the city. British intelligence suggests that the Ukrainian military could withdraw to new defensive lines located west of the city of Soledar in Donetsk region. This was reported by the British Ministry of Defense on Twitter. British intelligence suggested that on January 16, Ukrainian troops probably withdrew from the city of Soledar in Donetsk region, leaving it under Russian control. Ukrainian forces have probably created new defensive lines to the west of the city. British analysts note that the attack on Soledar was mainly carried out by mercenaries from Wagner's PNC, and the operation itself was auxiliary and aimed at enabling the encirclement of a larger settlement, Bakhmut. One of the two main supply routes for the Ukrainian military in Bakhmut is now under greater pressure. The images show that since the beginning of January 2023, south and east of Bakhmut continued to be subjected to intense artillery shelling. Ukrainian forces are almost certainly continuing their defense against Russian forces on the approaches to the city. At the same time, in the morning report of the General Staff of the Armed Forces of Ukraine, it is noted that Soledar was subjected to artillery fire from the Russian Federation. This shows that Ukrainian military personnel remain in the city. On January 17, commander of the Freedom Battalion, captain of the National Guard Petro Kuzik, stated that part of Soledar is under occupation, but in the industrial zone and on several streets, the Ukrainian military has established itself and is successfully conducting defensive battles. The situation remains extremely difficult, but still under control. Recall that earlier British intelligence reported that in the past 6 weeks, both Ukraine and the Russian Federation have achieved limited success, but for operational breakthroughs, both sides need to create formations of combat-ready troops capable of using these successes. The British Ministry of Defense indicated that the Russian offensive on Soledar was an auxiliary operation aimed at eventually covering the larger settlement of Bakhmut. The Russian invaders paid a high price during the assault on Soledar in the Bakhmut direction. This was stated at a briefing by U.S. State Department spokesman Vedant Patel. According to him, the fighting in the city continues, but the months-long campaign of Russia has led to huge losses in personnel. Thousands of untrained and ill-equipped Russian conscripts were killed, Patel said. In recent days, the Russians have made gradual progress, but it has come at a high price. In the area of Soledar and Bakhmut, on January 18, fierce fighting continues and Russian troops do not have full control over any of these cities. This was stated by the representative of the National Security Council of the White House, John Kirby, during a telephone briefing on January 18. It is also reported that the enemy's efforts are mostly directed by the Wagner PC, with some support from the Russian military. A White House official noted that Prigozhin wants to be seen as more relevant and indispensable on the battlefield than Russia's traditional armed forces. Because of this, there is tension between the Ministry of Defense of the country and the Wagner Group, added Kirby. Border guards stopped the occupiers' attempt to break through to Bakhmut. According to the State Border Service, several enemy groups tried to bypass the stronghold of the Ukrainian defenders. The fighters intercepted the maneuver with a shooting battle, and the border guards' mortars and artillery covered the invaders with fire, the message says. It is noted that the battle lasted for about 2 hours, during which time the defenders killed 5 occupiers and wounded 7 more. Russian invaders have been trying to capture the city for more than 1 month, and it has become a real fortress for the defenders of Ukraine. The enemy suffers huge losses and walks over the corpses of his own victims. On the morning of January 18, the General Staff of the Armed Forces of Ukraine reported that the enemy was concentrating its main efforts on conducting offensive operations in the Bakhmut direction. Thus, it can be concluded that the tension around this area is only growing, and soon we will see the outcome of these events. Of course, high-profile events are unfolding around new arms supplies to Ukraine. Zelensky used Davos' speech to intensify call for more tanks from allies. President says Ukraine needs heavy armor now, but German Chancellor is cautious about conflict escalating. Volodymyr Zelensky has stepped up calls for Ukraine's army to be supplied with heavy tanks and urged resolve and speed of decision-making from Western allies in the face of resistance from the German Chancellor, Olaf Scholz. Addressing a packed gathering at the World Economic Forum in Davos on Wednesday, Ukraine's president warned that tyranny is outpacing democracy, as Germany hesitates over whether to supply the country with Leopard 2 tanks. Scholz dashed hopes that he would announce a decision to supply Ukraine with heavy tanks in his keynote speech in Davos earlier in the day, making no new weapon commitments and warning the world needed to avoid escalating the conflict into a war between Russia and NATO. About 50 Western defense ministers of the Ukraine Contact Group will assemble at the Ramstein Air Base in Germany on Friday, at a meeting chaired by the U.S. Secretary Lloyd Austin, to discuss and coordinate future military aid to Kyiv. Earlier this month, the U.S. and Germany jointly announced they would send Bradley and Marder fighting vehicles to Ukraine, and some sources said they believe something similar could happen at the end of this week. Poland and Finland have said they want to send Ukraine Leopard 2 tanks, of which there are about 2,300 stockpiled in varying states of repair by NATO countries. But permission from Germany, where the Leopard was originally made, to re-export them is needed. For Ukraine, the unwillingness of the German authorities to transfer tanks to Ukraine remains a problem. Scholz said he would be willing to consider a proposal to transfer tanks to Ukraine, provided that the U.S. transfers its tanks to Abrams. Earlier, the United States stated that it would not be able to supply Abrams tanks to Ukraine due to their weight and difficulty in transportation. Poland's president has warned that Russia could be planning a new offensive in the coming months, calling on countries to provide Ukraine with weapons. Andrzej Duda told delegates at the World Economic Forum in Davos that Russia was still strong and that more action was needed to support Ukraine, adding that current levels of assistance were inadequate. This moment will answer the question, will Ukraine survive or not, said Duda. Over the past day, Ukrainian servicemen liquidated 760 invaders, 14 artillery systems, 6 tanks, 10 armored fighting vehicles. This is reported by the General Staff of the Armed Forces of Ukraine. Sincerely thank you for watching. Subscribe, leave comment, share this video, and support our team on Patreon. Strength and peace to you.